Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back again to another session, Rumination with Andrew, and thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And today we are going to be looking at China and the United States, China versus United States, and the new Cold War in the Caribbean and Latin American region. The Caribbean has become a front line in the new Cold War between the United States and China. Washington projects its power through military bases, sanctions, and political influence, while Beijing expands its reach with loans, infrastructure, and economic statecraft. But what does this mean for the Caribbean and Latin America? Is China really bringing multipolarism and balance? Or is it simply replacing the US as another empire? In this exclusive conversation with Gerald Perreira, Mr. Perreira, we dive into the truth about US-China rivalry in the region, the dangers of dependency, and the possibility of a truly independent multipolar future for the Caribbean. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more bold analysis exposing the real forces shaping Jamaica, Caricom, and Latin America. So we are going to be joined by Mr. Perreira this today. So let me open up the screen or the floor to Mr. Perreira. Let me invite him into the studios. Mr. Perreira, now, for those who do not know, Mr. Gerald A. Perreira is a liberation theologian, educator, and political activist. He is a chairperson of Organization for the Victory of the People, OVP, based in Guyana. And his site, where you can visit that website, www.ovpguyana.org. And he's also a member of the Governing Council of the Global Pan-African Movement and an executive member of the Caribbean Pan-African Network, CPAN. He lived in the Libyan Jamahiriya for many years and was a founding member of the World Mat Haba. He can be reached at Mojadi, that's Mojadi 94 at gmail.com. Good morning, Mr. Perreira. Are you there, Mr. Perreira? Good morning. Hello? Are we there, Mr. Perreira? Can't hear you. While he's getting his logistics together, let's continue with the program, and Mr. Perreira will be with us shortly. So Mr. Perreira is joining us from Guyana, and he will be looking at China versus the United States in this world that we are describing as a multipolar world. Mr. Perreira, have you joined?
Yes, my brother, I'm here.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you. Yes.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, my brother. I'm good.
Yes, yes. And the people enjoyed every moment of the interview last week. It went
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
People were just responding. And we got, of course, those who agree with us and those who disagreed. And that's good. That's what we want. We want the discussion to be had. Now, Mr. Perreira, we are talking in a world and people are talking much about multipolarism. Now, when China talks about multipolarism, do you think it genuinely means sharing global power, or is it simply replacing the US as another empire in a new world order? What do you think, Mr. Perreira?
I don't think you look at history and you look at what is taking place. I do not agree. I do not support the view that China is an imperial power or that China is seeking to replace the US as the new hegemon. I do not agree with that. That narrative, you get that narrative coming from two angles, two perspectives. One is the Western media, mainstream Western media, that just uses the word imperialism in a very loose way, and that the Chinese are this and the Chinese are imperialists and all of that. And then there is a Marxist left some Marxist scholars, writers, who have a very mechanistic reading of the world. Because here what happened. During the period when Karl Marx wrote, I'm not a Marxist. I'm socialist. I'm socialist.
Yes.
I believe that Marx made a tremendous contribution in his critique of what was happening in Europe. You know, the Industrial Revolution that was fueled by colonial genocide and the trade in captured Africans, African enslavement, that laid the material foundation for capitalist development in the West. Marx took 20 years to complete his great work, Capital, Das Capital, because there was a lot of things, new changes were taking place, and new data he was collecting and so on. But he did not live in the era of what is called monopoly capitalism, right? And it was Lenin who saw capitalism in that highest form, monopoly capitalism, as a form, monopoly capitalism as imperialism. Okay? The domination of the countries in the periphery, the so-called third world, by the core countries of the metropole, you know, the Western countries. But Lenin was writing for a particular time. And these people use a lot of things that, well, the analysis that they're using, the framework is no longer relevant. It's obsolete. It's a very dogmatic approach. Now, why I'm saying this is we do not live in a perfect world. The dominant social and production relations is capitalism. And countries have been trying to break away from it because they realize if they remain trapped within that, our countries will not go anywhere. We have seen, my brother, and this is what I like our listeners and viewers to understand. You look at a country like Nigeria that has been producing oil and gas for a very long time. But does the average Nigerian benefit from the oil and gas wealth? They don't. Nigeria is meant to be on paper sovereign and independent, but its entire relations with the West is one of neocolonialism. The Nigerian economy, strategic decisions about the Nigerian economy is not made by the Nigerian government and Nigerian decision makers. It's done within the framework of monopoly, the Western countries dominating and bullying the economy. That's how they bully you. They bully you. And if you decide to embark on a non-capitalist path of development, like active state intervention in the economy, state-led and state-driven economic development, you will get pressure. You will get pressure on you.
Yes.
So, yes. So today,
which leads me back to that question now. How do you define multipolarism in the Caribbean context? And is it even possible for small states to achieve it when giants like the US and China dominate the game? How would you define multipolarism?
Well, no one can deny that we have a multipolar world. Now, look at BRICS. The BRICS group represents roughly about 45% of the world's population and 25% of the global domestic product. China and India, they have very large population. And Brazil, that is a member of BRICS, has the largest population in South America. Now, the emergence of BRICS has put a tremendous amount of pressure, right? It has become a sort of a obstacle, right, to the imperial designs of the United States. No one can deny that. Though within BRICS, You have even countries that have neoliberal policies, like South Africa. Good. But at the end of the day, they are trying. It's not driven by one ideology, right? The BJP in India, the lead ruling party, has a different perspective of things compared with Iran or Brazil with the social democratic and what have you. But BRICS is, I am not saying it's an alternative as such, it's a step. Because we don't live in an ideal world. And we have to stop constructing the world in our heads.
Yes.
And face the reality.
Correct.
I am saying that if you look, had it not been for China, where China is today, a lot of countries in the global south, like take Zimbabwe, that has been under sanctions for a long time, had it not been for the Chinese, with the economic and financial arrangements that they have made with Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe would have been in a worse place today.
Now, are you aware, Mr. Perreira, that the ideology that is coming of BRICS, the whole frame of that BRICS ideology came from Wall Street, from a guy on Wall Street? I forgot his name, but we might not get into that sort of discussion today because we're not talking about the BRICS today. But that ideology came from Wall Street, and you know, Wall Street is the representative of the capitalist world. So how would
I'm not sure. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think BRICS, if you go back and you trace it, BRICS can be traced right back to Bandung.
To Bandung?
Bandung conference with Sukarno, Ahmed Sukarno in Indonesia. And so remember, years ago, we were talking about the NIO, a new international economic order.
Yes.
Then we went away, Manley and all of those people were talking about it. Burnham, Julius Nyerere, Michael Manley. We were talking about the new international economic order because what they were saying was that the economic order, the financial, the institutions and everything, it was rigged in favor of the rich Western countries as well as Japan.
No, it's China. At the time, it was Japan, but now it's China that is a part, because China is also a state capitalist country. It's not a communist country. I mean, I think perhaps socially it is, but politically it is communist, but economically, I should say, it believes in state capitalism. Wouldn't you say that?
No, I would agree. I'll tell you this. First of all, there's no communist country on the face of the earth.
Okay.
Marxist-Leninists would argue that communism represents a higher phase of socialism. As a socialist, I don't address the issue of communism. I believe that socialism, apart from being a socio-economic system, is also an ethical system. I think that socialism is always developing. I don't know. I know communism, from the Latin, in common, in communion. The early church, Christian church was very communistic.
Okay.
But we're not talking about that. But China is led by a communist party with the objective of eventually transforming that society over a period into what is a communist society. But a communist society can never be achieved in one country. Okay. That would have to be a planetary thing. But having said that, let's look at the economy. Now,
which I was moving.
China. China has.
Go ahead, Mr. Perreira. Go ahead. I was saying that China invests heavily in ports, roads, and telecoms across the Caribbean. Is that multipolar development or a softer economic form of empire building? Because when you look at a country like Jamaica, for example, it goes there, it invests in the highways, but at the same time, people are still paying high tolls, right? And they still have a high debt to pay for the roads that are being fixed. My question is that they're not building universities, and, well, I hear that they're now building a children's hospital in Montego Bay, but there's nothing that you're seeing where they're building the human resource of Jamaica. They're more investing in ports that support their own operations there?
I think before I get there, I was listening to the Greek economist and former finance minister Yanis Varoufakis.
Yes, from Greece.
And he said that when they came into office, you know him, Yanis Varoufakis,
yes, from Greece.
you know him.
Yeah, he's a Greek economist.
From Greece, yes, economist and former finance minister. He said they went to the Chinese and said, look, that you have bought the port now, which was made under the former government with neoliberal policies. And he said, could we make some arrangements and adjustment? Can we have this and that and payment into the pension plan and all of that? And the Chinese accepted everything and went along with it. One commentator was saying, could you imagine going to a Western country or a Western financial institution to do that? See, the Chinese do not tell you what to do in your country and how to run the economy. If you're getting construction, if you're getting projects that are, like, for instance, building roads and all of that, then that is what the JLP government must have been pushing, right? Because in other countries, like Zimbabwe and so, the government identify areas that they would like the Chinese to work on.
Yeah,
and that is what they do.
We see them coming with their workers, and and that is also another point that, you know, the citizens of the country, whether it's Jamaica, Guyana, I'm not sure what is happening in Guyana or Trinidad, or you see them on projects and you see a few local people there on the sites, but most of the workers are coming from Chinese. You also say that they don't tell us what we need to do, but if they're controlling our ports and our land, they control us. I mean, and they might not be controlling us overtly, but covertly, that is also a system of control. What do you have to say?
Well, I would tell you it varies from country to countries. I think it's the arrangement. Now, if you look at a place like where the Chinese are in Eritrea or the Chinese are in Zimbabwe, it's completely different to what you would see in Jamaica or Guyana.
Okay.
And yeah, now I know for a fact that when we were dealing with the Chinese under President Burnham, the Chinese technicians came when we were constructing. I'm giving one example, the textile mill. And the Chinese technicians trained the local labor force. They were new to this, how to run the mill and everything and all of that. Then they left. Okay? I speak to workers who are involved with projects with the Chinese. And I would stop and ask them and said, how's your relation? So, and they say, look, it's excellent. They like working with the Chinese. But you see, what has been happening now in Guyana is some of the buildings that are going up. Now they're constructing the Bank of Baroda, which is an Indian bank. They're putting up a new building. And it's a huge building if you see it. You see, over the years, a lot of in Guyana, especially on the Guyana that look, I'm just giving an example, Georgetown, that's below sea level.
Yes.
You were not allowed to put up buildings more than 3 stories. Most buildings were 2.
Right.
Then for some reason, we went to 3 stories and nobody said anything. Now we're putting up 6 and 8-story buildings and the buildings are lean. Right? Because nobody was trained to address that. So the Chinese now, with their technology, Chinese are showing you what we have to do.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of buildings around Guyana that are already cracked and are lean. You can actually see it. So a lot of our construction workers and carpenters, the buildings that are going up, they were just about nails and boards and all of that. But now it's much more complicated and complex. So the Chinese are trading them. I've seen Chinese workers, but I'm also seeing a lot of local workers. So I'm saying it has to do too with the government.
With agreement.
Because some governments just go along with it. You know, I think, and I'm not defending the Chinese, I think that governments need to say, well, look, if you're going to bring in X amount of workers, you will have to bring in so much. And so much of the labor force got to be made up of Jamaicans or Trinidadians. But listen, could you recall many moons ago when the Chinese were building the railway?
Yes.
In Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. This was under Julius Nyerere in Tanzania and Kenneth Kaunda in Zambia. The Chinese sent their technicians, but the labor force were from Tanzania and Zambia.
Mm-hmm.
And countries need to, that is where countries need to make sure that they enforce that. You know, you have to enforce that.
Yes.
So it varies.
Yes.
But I am saying, getting back to the class, the nature of the China.
Mm-hmm.
China has allowed capitalists, there are capitalists in China, right? People who
Hello? Am I? Yes, I went. Sorry about that, Mr. Perreira. Could you repeat what you were saying? Yeah, the internet seemed to have.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, there's a book, and I know you follow things, and I admire you. You're up on things. There's a book called "The East is Red."
Yes,
still red. And there's a group called the International Manifesto Group, made up of scholars all over. You can go to them and check their stuff. The East is Red, and there's books written by Western scholars who are based in China, teaching Chinese university. There's about 600 capitalists in China, but they cannot buy land and dispose of land as they like. That remains public entity, right? And at the end of the day, it is the Communist Party that is made up, driven by 38 million to 40 million members that are the decisive that provides the leadership. They have used that class has been used for innovation, maximization of profit and all of that, but the Chinese have used that. They have used that to move over 800 million people out of poverty within a certain time, which no capitalist country has been able to do it.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is this. You see, I want to say something. You know, when I was in high school and early days at university, and Mao Zedong died, and then Xiaoping took over, I was one who was saying, oh, China's on the capitalist road, and the Chinese are this and they betray Mao Zedong. But you cannot socialize poverty. Socialism is not about the socialization of poverty. Socialism is about raising people's standard of living, raising it. It's about narrowing the gap in income inequality and the disparities in wealth distribution. The Chinese have been able to do that. Nothing is perfect, but we live in a globalized world, and the contradictions of capitalism will impact on all of our societies. And I think the reason that China was able to survive and did not go down the way of the Soviet Union or facing the problems that Cuba is facing, although you cannot take away the sanctions, the illegal thing against the unjust sanctions, the criminal docket against Cuba, is you have to realize, and this was a fatal mistake that Marxist communists made.
Yes.
They believe.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. They treated all forms of private ownership as something synonymous with capitalism. No.
Yes.
No. There was always forms of private ownership before capitalism emerged as a social and economic formation.
Yes.
When capitalism became the dominant mode of production, they still had elements of feudalism existing within it. But that did not make capitalist society feudal. In the same way that China, the dominant mode is socialist, but because they have elements of capitalism in it, does not make it capitalistic.
Yes. No.
Good. So I'm saying at the end of the day, there isn't the class, the Communist Party, that gives leadership there. That class does not appropriate the surplus value or surplus, and reinvest it in themselves to regenerate themselves as a class like you see in the West, in America.
Correct.
The United States has never executed a millionaire, much less a billionaire.
Yeah.
A Chinese billionaire was executed for trying to corrupt the system and doing things that goes against the national framework.
Yes.
Now, the state, and this is where the Chinese said, look, we are building socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Okay.
Because you have to take your own, yeah.
Right. The U.S. has long combined economic and military power in the Caribbean, and does its dominance today leave any space for real multipolarism to emerge?
Well, that is what the U.S., this multipolarism that you're speaking about, it's become, it has impacted tremendously on U.S. Imperial designs and U.S. policies, because countries that had to go to the IMF and the World Bank and those places are going to other places. They're going to the Chinese, they're going to Russia, Brazil. I even see, I just lately, I see that Venezuela, yet today in the news, that Venezuela has tied up arrangements with Trinidad, with Suriname, in development of the oil and gas industry, right? Because Venezuela has a lot of know-how, technical know-how and expertise and experience in that they could share.
Yes.
So you also have, I see people are bringing now Nigerians who are much experienced. Nigeria's produced some exports in that area. They're even coming to Guyana and going to other places. Good. And before, we would have to depend strictly on so-called exports from the West, from the United States. So that's changing. But I'm saying that this multipolar world, I'm not saying it's the ideal that what we want, the alternative. So because there are all sorts of contradictions within that. Good. But at least it's emerging within the global South. And Brazil is talking to South Africa. And you're getting this direct South Africa to Brazil, Brazil to
yeah, but my only pushback against multipolarism, my argument is that that has always been the word. When you think about the formation of the Americas and how the British and the Germans and the Spanish and the French were all here and they were interplaying and capturing different countries here and there, where I don't see a difference in the world in which we live and the world we live in then. There were all
I know what you were saying. But
great power.
I wanted,
there was always a great power, and there were always, these remnants of power structures that remained in that world. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I see what you're saying, but I want to distinguish between the form and substance.
Yes.
Let me show you something. Just before I get back to what you're saying about.
Yes.
That's right, what you said. In that world, we had the carve up of our world by the French, all these colonial powers. If we look at it this way logically, Rome had emperors. Okay? So Tiberius was a tyrant, so was Nero, and so was Caligula. All three were emperors in the Republic. Marcus Aurelius, who wrote the Meditation, the Stoic philosopher, was an emperor. But was he a tyrant? He was an emperor. So what I'm saying is, we don't equate the emperorship with tyranny. Because although we had many emperors who were tyrants, you had exceptions to the rule. I'm saying that China's a superpower like the United States, but is it imperialistic?
Yes.
As the United States? No. I think what the Chinese are doing, the Chinese are trying to navigate a world where they have to sustain their economic growth because it's the largest manufacturing center now in the world, China. And China's aware, ever since the days of Nixon and them on, when Nixon said he will not go to China, but eventually met with Mao Zedong, Kissinger advised him. China know that eventually the US will come after them. And that is why if you look at that military parade about a week and a half ago, where the Chinese commemorated the anniversary over the victory over Japanese imperialism, that show off of military hardware, it was one of the largest military parades. You had 10,000 troops marching alongside military hardware, submarines, and all of that. Good. And China did not show off a lot of what they have, because China's aware that Trump, you see, Trump wants peace, as I pointed out on your program. Trump wants this end to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, because the reason Trump at one point stopped American weapons going there is because the US, many European countries have run out of weaponry to supply to Ukraine. You know, Russia's been tapping into drones from Democratic Republic of Congo and from China, who be supplying them. And the US want that war to go on the back burner so they could concentrate on China. And Trump hates China. The Chinese are aware of this. And I believe that some point in the future, if Trump is still around, and it's going to be around because his term is that he got more years, I think we're going to see some clash between the Chinese and they are
an American sort of push. I don't look at the characters in America. I look at the system, and I think the system is the same. The Democratic Party has its way of dealing with these powers. The Republicans have their way, but ultimately, the ultimate agenda is to crush any competitor in the world that challenges
absolutely
the US.
I absolutely agree with you.
Trump is being there, is Trump there, or it is Biden, or it is even me.
Biden. Yeah, you remember
on top of that military.
Remember I told you what Malcolm X said, but the wolf for the fox.
Yes, yeah.
The soft, the friendly fascism of the Democrats and the naked fascism of the Republicans. But you're right, because if you go back to the 50s, if you examine the 50s to reinforce what you were saying, and we answer, there was a great American political sociologist by the name of C. Wright Mills.
Yes, I know him.
He wrote a book. Yeah, he wrote a book called The Power Elite.
Yes, Power
Elite. And it took him years to. And Mills arrived at the conclusion that the American public believe that they have a say in things because they're allowed to vote. But he pointed out that irrespective of which party got into office, there was a power elite that was unelected that calls the shots.
Yes.
Marxist scholars start to refer to it as, some people call it the military industrial complex, others call it the deep state, and all of that. But that is the group. That's why you've noticed over the years, and that's why Kennedy was assassinated. Have you noticed even Obama?
And he
when they're running for when they're running for the presidency.
Yes.
Yeah, when they're running for the presidency, they say one thing, but the minute they're elected, it's something different, because the power broke. The powerful players, the shadowy government, call them in and tell them this is how it has to go. They go. You know, Trump talk about the neocons, but you can see the neocons. You're seeing the neocons at work here. So you are right. And that is why, as Michael Parenti, the great American political scientist, said, he said it's democracy for few. Sheldon Wolin, the late American political theorist, referred to it, the American system, as inverted totalitarianism.
Yes, he's a brilliant scholar. He was rather brilliant.
That's right. You see, my brother, you're up on things. Yes. I love that.
The thing about it is that, one, I was brought up in I don't know if you have several Seventh-day Adventist churches in your neck of the woods in Guyana.
Yeah.
And, we have been talking about the image of the beast and all of that stuff. So these are things that have been known to me from I was young.
Helen White's book, great controversy.
I'm studying the political science now and the history. I realized that much of what the Adventist was talking about prophecy are aligned with political history, economic history, and I'm just putting the dots together. So it really fits in the glue. I glue them all together, and I realize that it makes a lot of sense. Now,
brother,
yes,
go ahead. I could see. I do not disagree with you. I do not read history.
Yes,
from a materialist slash secular perspective. I don't.
Yes.
I believe that there's a transcendental dimension to all civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in God. I believe there's a higher power. And I believe that the battle that we wage on this plane, this material plane, is also being fought on a higher plane,
Yes.
on the spiritual plane.
Yes.
I believe, and I listened to President Petro, he said President Trump, and he was shaped by liberation theology. President Trump is an agent of dark. He represents a dark force in the universe. You know, secular people and materialists dismiss that. I do not. I believe that as I fight for change in this world, as I fight with the enemy who I can see, there's an enemy that I cannot see.
Yeah.
And that is why we who fight to advance this, we say the social and political revolution, we also talk about advancing the spiritual revolution.
Revolution, absolutely. Now, Mr. Pearl, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. So 2 minutes you have remaining. Could you tell us how we are going to be able in the Caribbean to deal with these two well, you said that China is not a hegemonic power, but it's a power. How are we going to face the rivalry between the countries, and what can we do to ensure that our interests are what we seek to preserve?
Well, CARICOM has good relations with China that has been established for many decades ago. And CARICOM has to stand in a very unified manner on this issue. Pressure is being exerted on some countries to scale back, to cut back with their relations with China.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not think the United States has no right, either from a moral or historical perspective, to tell us who we should have relations with. Yes. The Chinese recognize us as sovereign and independent states. The US, as I pointed out, if you study the Monroe Doctrine, has always been contemptuous of our independence and sovereignty. That's why they refer to us as their backyard.
Yes.
And as Morris Bishop said, we're in nobody's backyard. But I believe at the end of the day, the Chinese have the governments, wherever there's shortcomings by the Chinese, the Caribbean government have to talk to them the same way the Greeks talk to them. And they said, yes, we go with it. Our leaders should be able to do that. And having said that, I believe also that we should not, our leaders, many of our leaders, I know they're afraid of the Americans, the bullying. But I'm seeing some who are trying to stand up. But at the end of the day, it is the people who we have to mobilize to stand up to defend our sovereignty rather than just individuals.
Thank you so much, Mr. Perreira. And we just have to end here. I wish you can come back next week so we can continue this.
Anytime, brother, anytime.
Engaging conversation.
Anytime. As I said, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, brother.
And I like your being candid with us. And the fact that we need these conversations, we need these debates. So thank you so much, Mr. Perreira, and we'll see you in another time.
Yes, welcome, my brother.
Okay.
Stay strong. God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you in another one. And remember, you can leave your monetary donations at the Cash App. And we'll see you. All the best to you. Bye-bye.